Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition, episode number 42 of Coffee Time with Byron. And alongside me is former MLB pitcher Don August. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How you been?
Good, hanging in there. You've been staying safe?
Yeah, I think so. For the most part, still doing good.
I agree, same here. That's what we've been doing. Trying to avoid this new version of the Delta virus that's everybody's talking about. The governor here in Florida won't shut even though the cases keep going up. I don't know about where you guys are, but enough of that. But yeah, try to stay safe here.
Okay.
So let's get started. I am seeing here, why not start off with the Olympics? I see right here you were part of the men's baseball team at 84 in Los Angeles. You guys earned a silver. Take us through that experience. What was it like playing for the United States and the country at the Olympic Games?
Well, that was definitely a great experience. You know, back then, the Olympics were still using amateur sports. You know, it was before Dream Team when they started using professional basketball players in the 92 Olympics. So it was still amateurs. Mm-hmm. So the U.S. baseball team had to start trying to find a way to form a team. You know, they had like 3 years or so in advance to start to do this. And they had these tryout camps throughout the country. So I was in my third year of college. There was one around the block for me. I went to Chapman College, and the tryout camp that I ended up going to was at Cal State Fullerton, which was probably less than 5 miles away. So I went there, and I did pretty well. They put me on a recommendation list, and then as the college season progressed, they asked me to come to Louisville like the first week of June to be on their 30-man roster, which they'd have to trim down to 20 during their summer tour. So it was just a great experience for me because I'm from the Southern California area. I grew up in the LA area there. And I made the team, and we played our games at Dodger Stadium, which was a stadium that I went to many times as a kid watching Dodger games. And my family was able to be there, so it was just an awesome experience just in the Olympics because, you know, throughout my whole life, I've always watched the Olympics, and then here was a chance for me, and I was able to participate in it. So it was really a cool thing. So I still keep watching the Olympics all the time, and the past 2 Olympics before this Tokyo, they didn't have baseball. Yeah. I was disappointed in that.
Same.
So it was great that I found out that Tokyo was going to have the baseball back in along with softball, and you know, the host country is allowed to put in the sports that they would like in there. So, of course, baseball is a big sport there in Japan. So they got it in. But then I found out not that long ago that the next Olympics in 24 are going to be in Paris.
Yeah, I don't think
they're not going to have baseball or softball. I was disappointed to hear that. But then I read some more. And then the 28 Olympics are going to be in Los Angeles again.
Oh, yeah.
And the 32 Olympics are going to be in Brisbane, Australia. Mm-hmm. So 2 baseball-type countries, and they're going to be back in there. And I guess we don't know where the next would be the 36 Olympics will be at. Yeah. But at least we know, okay, we'll have to skip one more. I guess the Frenchies don't like baseball or they want to promote it. But, hey, yeah, we'll get it in the next 2 after that.
That's because they're mainly they're mainly volleyball / soccer / what else do they play over there?
Basketball. They play the Olympic team both. So, and there's a lot of good French NBA players, but I guess I don't think they play baseball at all, as far as I know. There, so yeah.
I haven't known any French players in the majors, or that played Major League Baseball. So I'm thinking you're right. Yeah, I don't think the French play it over there.
So we'll skip it. You know, they'll put out what sports they like. You know, the basics. I'm sure. You know, But yeah, they'll get him back in again, so it's not a total loss. And I would like to see eventually, which will be real hard because he's never been able to do it, is get the Major League Baseball players into it.
See, that's where I'm leading to the next. I was going to ask you that next too. Yeah, I don't think it was fair because I'm partial. I'm half and half. Like when you played, it was just amateurs. I agree. That's what the Olympics kind of should be, is amateurs. But I also agree with other people that say, no matter the profession, if they're already in sports, whatever professional, they should have a right to play for their country. And I agree. And I don't think that was right that Japan pretty much used all their all-stars that are in their league playing professionally, while we only used minor leaguers and 3 or 4 major leaguers on that roster.
Former major leaguers, I think the Americans end up using.
Yeah.
The Japanese they kind of took a little break from their professional league, whereas the Major League Baseball does not.
Right.
So they were able to use their top players, but their top players, Japanese players that are in the major leagues, could not leave. So they didn't quite get their very best, but we're choosing minor leaguers, because baseball takes place in the summer, and the Summer Olympics take place in the summer. So hopefully one day they can find a way to do that, because the WBC, the World Baseball Classic, they have so many years apart. Everybody gets to use their best players for the major leaguers. So that, to me, that is almost bigger than Olympics. But I've always looked at the Olympics as the big sporting event, that takes the whole world in.
Yeah.
And they should have the very best.
Yeah.
So I think sooner or later they'll find a way to make that all work. But in the meantime, we'll fill the team. And unfortunately, the Americans lost to the Japanese just recently, in the last day or so, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I felt kind of bad because that's the team we lost to. We lost to Japan, and it was disappointing and all that kind of stuff. But it was a lot of hard work by a lot of people to get baseball into the Olympics. And once we kind of got that in, I was hoping to see this thing grow, which it has, but I think it's got one more step to go to really make it where everyone would like to see it be at.
Now, this year, Mike Scioscia took the helm, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be maybe coaching the next one. Who knows? Maybe WBC when that comes up, because that should be coming soon. Who'd you have as your manager? Did you have an amateur manager? Did you have a professional manager? Who were your coaches when you were on the team?
Our manager was Rod Dedeaux. He was like the legendary college baseball coach at USC. Mm-hmm. I mean, by the time 1984 Olympics rolled around, I think he's roughly been like managing at USC for over 40 years. And back in the day, in his time there, USC won several, NCAA Division I baseball championships. So he was just legendary, especially for me growing up in that area. We all knew who Rod Dedeaux was. And he was always an ambassador to baseball, pushing for, baseball to become an Olympic sport. Before they got things going in '84, they always had these world championships, and every summer there was a USA baseball team. They'd travel Europe and go to South America and all these other different parts around the world, playing these big tournaments and stuff. So he was our guy. He was the main guy who was driving it. He was the first manager. Trying to think about other coaches was John Scalinas. He was a long-time college coach out of Cal Poly Pomona. I'm trying to think of the other guys' names. But we had coaches, from different schools around the country. They were all college-level coaches that were part of our coaching staff in '84.
So basically, like you said, it was all mainly just amateurs. So were the other teams just amateurs as well, or were they allowed to have other players that, like for example, when you went up against Japan, were they only allowed to use amateurs like you guys were, or how did that go?
Yeah, because that's why the Olympics were all together. You had to be amateur status. Now, back in those olden days, even before that, the communist country, the Soviet Union back in the day, they kind of knew how to work the system a little bit, so to say, where they would have their players considered amateurs, but that's what they did. That was kind of like their job. They just played, like the hockey team just played hockey, and their gymnasts were just gymnasts and stuff. So they found a way to keep their amateur status, but they had their very, very best. And that was kind of like a push for the U.S. Olympic, committee to say, well, they got their very best, and people always want our very best. Our very best are professionals.
Right. So
I don't think they really had a professional kind of a system at all in those communist countries back in the day. So.
Right. So now, talk about your performance in the Olympics. How well did you do? How many games did you end up pitching? And how did that format go? Were you a starter, bullpen, whatever they needed you? What was your role?
I ended up being a relief pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we had an 8-man pitching staff that we finally trimmed down to. We started that pre-Olympic tour in the first week of June. We had the 31 players, 16 were pitchers. So about half the team was going to be cut down were pitchers. Mm-hmm. So from 16 down to the final 8. So I made it through that. It just about, they pretty much had all the top pitchers in the country, in the NCAA, mm-hmm. were the guys that were chosen to try out for the team at that point. And we all were, if you're a star, it's pretty much the top pitchers were starters. So, we basically had 8 starting pitchers, but, we had to cut down to we ended up using 3 or 4 starters and maybe 4 or 5 guys, whoever turned out to be relievers. So I was one of the guys they just decided would be more of a relief pitcher. Our first game in the tournament was against Chinese Taipei, which is Taiwan, mm-hmm. more political stuff involved in sport.
Right.
But our starting pitcher was John Hoover. He was out of Fresno State, had a great season, and so Rod Dato named him as our number 1 pitcher. So he pitched that game, complete game where we won.
Did he go to play in the majors as well? That name sounds familiar.
He did make it briefly to the major leagues. Out of the 20 players that made the roster, 16 of the guys ended up making it into the major leagues. Mm. So he made it up. He was drafted by the Baltimore Orioles. I think he briefly made it the Texas Rangers, at one point.
Yeah.
So then the second game we played was against Italy, and we beat them 16-1. Mm. I came in the 9th inning to hold that 15-run lead. And so I got my inning in, and I was very happy. I got in. I pitched on the mound at Dodger Stadium. My family was there to watch. I'm in the books. I'm in. So I was glad, and I was extremely happy about that. The pitcher that started that game, it was either Scott Bankhead or Billy Swift. So those guys would end up being our 3 starting pitchers. Then the next game we played the Dominican Republic. And one of those 2 guys started that game, and I came in the 9th inning again, in a 12-0 game. So, I held the lead again. Mm-hmm. No pressure there, I guess. So I go, wow, I was really happy. Now I got in 2 games, 2 innings in Dodger Stadium. So I was good with that. And then the next game would be against Korea, which is now the medal round. Mm-hmm. We had to win that game to play for the gold medal game. Mm-hmm. It would end up being against Japan, but I thought, okay, I pitched in 2 games. Coach Dino got me in. I'm happy. So before that game against Korea, I'm in the dugout, probably about 15 minutes before game time. I did not think I was going to pitch. I had my turf shoes on. I didn't have my protective cup on. I didn't have my glove down there. I was going to kick it on the bench and cheer for the team until Coach Dato and Coach Salinas came up to me and said, hey, how you feeling? I go, I'm all right. They go, well, you're in first in relief. Are you ready to go? And I go, yeah, I'm ready to go. So, okay. So as soon as they turned their back, I had to run back up that tunnel and get my spikes on, get my cup on, get my glove, and hurry back down and get out to the bullpen. Mm. So Scott Bankhead started that game. And he pitched great all summer long throughout that tournament. Even in the tour, and then in the tournament, he pitched great. But that game, he was just a little off. So he ran into some trouble, early in the game. And Coach Dale had called down the bullpen, got me up. I got up at least 2 times, getting ready to go. And he would work his way out of it. And then, it was the 5th inning. They scored some runs off of him. Mm-hmm. And then he gave a home run and a double, and then he wild pitched the guy to third, something like that. And that's when Coach Dado called me in to come to the game. So it was a 2-2 game in the 5th inning. I had a 2-0 count on the batter and 2 outs. I got the guy out. And then we had Pat Pasillo, was a real hard-throwing guy out of Seton Hall, and we had Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt had like about a 16-year Major League career.
Yes, he did, yep.
The Texas Rangers and a few other teams. But those 2 guys were real hard throwers. And so I thought those guys would be the ones that he'd have ready in this game anyways. But I still had the comfort that while I was out there, if I had any trouble, I knew those guys were behind me. Mm-hmm. But I ended up pitching the rest of the way through. I threw the final 4 to 3rd innings. I didn't give up any runs. I held them down. Our team scored 3 more runs, and we'd hold off and we'd win the game 5-2. So that game was by far more exciting than holding on those 9th innings in a 15-run and 12-run lead. So, and the next day was against Japan, and John Hoover would start that game, and I was definitely not pitching down the next day after going that many pitches the night before.
I don't blame
you. So I cheered the team on, but we came a little short, unfortunately. So I was kind of I think back on that, and I just feel awful that we blew that game, and we should have won, but
it is what it is.
The bottom line of that, I tell people that's just how baseball goes. On any given day, the other team can beat you.
That's right,
and they did.
So now, unfortunately, because of COVID restrictions and all that, fans weren't allowed in the stands for any Olympic Games. What was it like in your time before the COVID era when you guys actually had fans? How electric was it playing in front of the home crowd, which you guys did at Dodger Stadium?
It was incredible, truly incredible. Again, we were just college guys. We haven't begun our pro careers yet. A lot of us were first-round draft picks. We had about 5 guys, I think, were sophomores, so they would return to college the following year. Mm-hmm. The other 15 of us were all drafted, and we signed our contracts. And when the Olympics were over, we were then allowed to continue and finish, begin our professional careers, which had about a few weeks of the minor league season left. A couple guys did that. Then I don't know, they called it the instructional league way back then. It's kind of maybe referred to as the fall league, the Arizona Fall League stuff.
Right.
So that's what I first did after the Olympics ended. But since we all were college players, we didn't play in front of really super big crowds. The top, those guys who were from Arizona State, USC, Florida, and all that. They probably played in front of 5,000 and 6,000 people in those little mini college stadiums back in the day.
Right.
But nothing like a full house in Dodger Stadium. So I think what kind of got us going a little bit was during the tour, we played in about 12 major league stadiums. We would play a game against a local All-Star team or against Korea or Japan team, just random teams like so. Mm-hmm. And we had played before the major league game. So we had to have our game done at a certain time. But the fans would come early, would catch our game, and then they'd get to watch the major league game afterward. Mm-hmm. So we played in these major league stadiums, but they weren't filled. They were filling up to a regular night, at a major league ball game. So that was kind of a good start. We had the fans doing that USA kind of chants and stuff. But when we got to the Olympics, the first thing that we did that was super big was the opening ceremonies there at the Coliseum, which held over 100,000 people. Mm-hmm. So as all the countries marched into the field for the opening ceremonies, we're the last country, the host country.
Right.
And we came in, and it was just weird. You saw like this light at the end of the tunnel, and you got closer and closer, and you popped out, and then boom. It was just the noise and the 100,000 people. It was incredible. So that was like, whoa. And then they did their thing. They did their show, and all the people, dignitaries got there and spoke and this and that. So that was kind of neat. Then about a day or two later was the opening of the tournament in Dodger Stadium, which I think at that time, I think Dodger Stadium was like, they could hold roughly about 55,000 people.
Yeah.
And every one of our games were sold out. So that's when it got real crazy. You know, we got, the pre-tour a little bit, the 100,000 thing in the opening ceremonies, but when we got on that field that first time, I remember looking at all the guys' faces. We're just like, all eyes were rolled real big. We're looking around this baseball stadium filled with people. And I mean, we got there early because the first game was Chinese Taipei played, I think, the Dominican Republic or Italy or something like that. But then we played the feature game, the second game, the night game. Mm-hmm. And so we got there early. So I remember we just had this nervous, anxious kind of energy. So a bunch of us kind of, normally we would be playing catch that soon, but we went there to throw the ball, maybe kind of work it out or something. And then the thing I've talked about a lot and mentioned to people is the public address announcer out of the blue said, "Ladies and gentlemen, direct your attention to the left field foul line. The United States baseball team," and the place just erupted loud. It was so loud, if you screamed, you couldn't hear yourself. And that just threw everybody under this next level, man. I was playing catch. I was like, I just got hit with freaking adrenaline rush. I was afraid I was going to fall over the guy's head into the stands, and just like, okay, let's calm down. And then, like about 20 seconds after that, the whole stadium went that USA, USA. Oh man, I mean, the goosebumps up and down the arms and down your spine were crazy. And then, so throughout the rest, the 5 games of the tournament that we played in, of course, we were the home team, the home fans on the most part. They totally support us. You see the flags waving in the stands and the USA chants, and so I mean that was incredible, and it was real good for the guys because the other 5 guys who were sophomores, and the next year they will all become first-round draft picks, and 16 out of the 20 guys all together would play in the big leagues. But this was a great experience for us to carry into our professional and major league careers.
Right, exactly. I agree with you on that. That definitely led you guys to the right road right there. So let's get started with you getting drafted. I believe it was the Brewers, correct? You were drafted?
Nope.
Okay.
I was drafted by the Houston Astros.
Because I'm trying to find it. I couldn't find it, so I couldn't find it. I don't know. I got a lot of information on you. I just couldn't find that little bit.
I was traded to the Brewers. So in the '84 draft, I was the first round pick of the Houston Astros. After those Olympics ended, I did that fall thing that we called instructionally back in the day. So that's the first thing I did. And that was basically for a bunch of the brand new draft picks of that year and a lot of the super young prospects. And it would last 6 weeks in Arizona. And we'd work out in the morning. And then afterwards, we faced those scrimmage games against the other teams, as instructional league teams. Mm-hmm. So I did that, and then during that winter, I got my letter from the Houston Astros to give me my spring training information, and I was reading. They go, "Yeah, we need you to show up in," I don't know, I said like February or whatever, like February. I go, "I know minor league spring training won't start until March." So I called my agent up and kind of read him the letter. He goes, "Oh yeah, you're going to major league spring training." So I went to spring training there of 1985, and I'm going there with guys like Nolan Ryan and Mike Scott and a lot of other great players on those Houston Astros teams. So they kind of brought me there as kind of as a first-round pick coming out of the Olympics, just to let me see what this major league thing was kind of about, get to know the guys. So I might have pitched in just one game, and then I'd be sent down, and I played that season in Double-A, and had a great year. I was called back to Major League Spring Training again the following year, and then I was sent down to play AAA. So I was in my second pro season in the minor leagues. I'm in AAA. I was having a lot of success. It was in August of '86 then that I got traded. The Houston Astros would win that Western Division that year, and so they make their trades like they just kind of did here in the trade deadline. All these big trades that took place. I was traded with another young Astros prospect to the Brewers. Mm-hmm. They got Danny Darwin, who at the time was a veteran pitcher. So the Astros traded us to get him to help secure them to win that division, in which they did, and they would end up playing the New York Mets in the NLCS, and they would lose, and the Mets would go on and beat the Red Sox in the World Series. But that's where I started, and I was traded to the Brewers that year, and then I played a few more years in the minors until I finally got my opportunity in the big leagues in 1988.
So when you did have that success in AAA, you had a 352 with the Denver Zephyrs in the Pacific Coast League that we call now. That's when you, after that, you got called up to the Brewers that year. You majored Major League debut. Tell us about that experience. Where were you when you first got the call up? And were you calling up for somebody who was injured, or were they just calling you up because of performance?
I think probably a little bit of both. So, after the 86 season, that year I was in AAA with Tucson, when I got traded to the Brewers, I went to their Vancouver team, was also in the Pacific Coast League. So I finished up the last 3 weeks of the season with them. We played the playoffs, and I ended up having I came in second for the ERA title. Mm-hmm. The year before, my first year of pro ball in AA, I skipped rookie ball and A ball, played AA. In the Southern League, I was second in the ERA title again. So 2 years in a row, I came second in the ERA titles. I kind of thought maybe the Brewers would call me up after the 86 season, and they didn't. So then I was sent to play AAA in 87. And I thought they'd call me up at the end of that season, and they didn't. So I was kind of getting a little disappointed and thinking, well, why would you trade for me? And I was in a good situation being a first-round pick in that Houston organization. So, but when they sent me down in 88 to start the season in AAA again, the minor league director said, hey, you're pitching great. And he didn't have to tell me this. He says, you're going to be the first guy we call up, okay? Mm-hmm. You just be ready. Mm-hmm. So I go down there, and other weird things took place, and I wasn't the first guy, but it was because I pitched the day before when they needed someone to pitch the next day. So it was just a timing thing. And the guy called me again and said, hey, I know that what I told you, but just hang tight. So it's probably not even a week later. I don't know if a player might have got hurt, but I was pitching really good down in AAA, and they made the move to call me up. So I came up, it was June 2nd of 1988. The night before, the AAA team, we're in Denver. We were in Denver, and it was just one of those things where, the manager came up and said, hey, I need to talk to you in my office. Okay, what can we talk about? You have to explain, maybe that's what they do when they call up, or hopefully something's not wrong. You don't know until you walk in and they tell you. Right. So he says, yeah, Don, you're going to meet the team tomorrow in Milwaukee. You've just been called up to the major leagues. Congratulations and all that kind of stuff. So that's when I got the message for that. So I had an apartment there in Denver. I had a roommate. So I had all night long pack up whatever stuff I could take, and I had to leave a lot of stuff behind. And that next morning I got to the airport and I flew to Milwaukee. And the Brewers may have somebody from the front office meet me at the airport to pick me up and get me to the stadium, because it was like the late afternoon by the time I arrived. Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of funny that I went to get my luggage. I had a few suitcases. I had my baseball bag and another little bag or something, and two of them were missing. So we're sitting there well, okay, that's not a good sign. But luckily enough that my baseball bag did make it. So the guy said, well, don't worry, we'll get it later. Okay, all right, whatever. So I jump in the car with him, and we drive to County Stadium, and I make my way in and get to the clubhouse, and I see our manager Tom Troublehorn there, and the pitching coach Chuck Hartenstein. They congratulated me and said, hey, we brought you here to be a starting pitcher, but tonight just kind of go out in the bullpen and just sit out there and take it in, and who knows, we could possibly get in the game. Just be ready for anything. So then I went to my locker and saw my uniform hanging in my locker, and the guys was now coming into the ballpark at that time too, and they saw that I was there. So again, a bunch of guys were congratulating me, making it up to the major leagues and all that. And so when the game started, after BP, it was just really neat to be up there in the field. I'm just looking at this major league team. This is the major leagues for real. I've been to about four major league spring trainings already. Spring trainings, it's different than daytime during the regular season. So, I just remember, this is it, man. I go, this is our home stadium right here, and just taking it in, just checking it all out, and then So, did batting practice and just did the whole thing. And the fans were coming in and just seeing it. It was really exciting. And then, so I went out to the bullpen, figuring there's no way, but I'm going to pitch, but I'll just sit out there and just hang with the guys and just keep checking things all out. And, our starting pitcher, his start before. Just came, that's one thing I wasn't sure if I should have been called up then. And I was like, oh man, when am I going to get a chance? And then there's Odell Jones, and he takes a no-hitter into the ninth inning that first start.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, that was, they're going to probably stick with him. He was like the long reliever at the time. But he's got this start. And it's like the first 3 or 4 innings, he was just dealing again. But then he kind of hit a little bump in the road, and it was in let me think, the 5th inning, I think. Yeah, the 5th inning, he struggled. That he gave up the lead.
Mm-hmm.
And they called down to the bullpen, and they got a guy named Paul Mirabella, was like a left-handed reliever for us. So Mirabella goes in the game to finish out that inning. So as he's running out to finish that inning, the phone rang again, and they the bullpen coach answered it, and Trevor told him to tell me that I had the next inning, which would be the 6th inning. Mm-hmm. So Mirabella finished the 5th. So I'm getting all pumped up now and warming up there, and as soon as we batted and we didn't score, but I remember I was in the game, my first game, and I remember Larry Haney, who was the bullpen coach out there, told me some advice that really helped me. He says, hey, just go out there and just keep pitching like how you've been pitching this whole season in Denver. Don't do anything different. I guess young pitchers tend to think they got to try to do more than what they were doing, which was what got them out there in the first place.
Right.
Try to do more.
Right.
So I said, okay, I'm not going to try to overthrow. I'll stay within what I know what I can do. I'll work with the catcher, and we'll see what happens. So I kind of, at least I had something to grasp onto. And so I went out there, and I got through that inning. I think there's 3 up, 3 down. Yeah, I think it was a 3 up, 3 down inning. So I went in, we batted, I went back out again. I pitched to 4 batters. I remember I walked Wally Joyner. I played with Wally Joyner in a college summer league like 6 years before that.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked in, and I got the other 2 guys out. And then when we batted in the bottom of the inning, we scored a bunch of runs and took the lead. So then, back in the day, our closer was Dan Plesac. He's like the big left-handed relief pitcher, like Josh Hader's with the Brewers today.
Right.
He was our guy was in the All-Star game, and so he went in and did a 2-inning save. So it wasn't out of the ordinary back then for closers to do 2-inning saves.
Yeah.
So he went out there and pitched the 8th and 9th innings, held them down. So my first day in the big leagues, I got a win. And I got, I pitched 2 innings in relief, no runs, got the W. And then after the game, I go to my locker, and there's a bunch of reporters there to ask me how it was. And as I was walking to my locker, I saw my 2 missing suitcases arrive. So everything all worked out just fine that first day. So it was a very memorable first day in the major leagues.
There you go. I'm glad you remember that, because a lot of people don't remember that. Like I asked that to every person I have, and half don't even remember their first call up. I want to be like to them, how do you not remember your first call up? You would think that would be your most memorable experience, getting called up.
I find that surprising that they don't remember.
Yeah.
But I guess what made mine was my first game that I actually got into a game and faced around. Maybe they get called up, they got to wait 3 days before they come in relief, or 3 or 4 days. Hey, that's when you're going to make your start or something like that. But I guess a lot of things happened to me in that day that I'll never forget it, and I find it kind of hard to believe that anyone would forget anything on that first day.
Exactly. So you continued with your success. You were still called up. Obviously, you went 13-7 with a 3.09 ERA, and you finished 4th in the AL Rookie of the Year. Oakland Athletics shortstop Walt Weiss won it that year. What do you remember most about that year and being eligible to almost win Rookie of the Year?
Well, everything just seemed to work well. I mean, I was on a good streak when I was in Denver. I carried that good touch. I had some success. That game in relief Then it was like 3 or 4 days. I think it was like 4 days later. They told me I was going to start in Seattle. So that first start, I went 7 innings with 2 runs. 1 was earned. I lost 2-0, but I pitched a real good game. So I just had a nice little flow. I was kind of starting to get acclimated to this major league thing. Mm-hmm. My next few starts, I did really good, and I just had a good little roll going. Everything was right there. All my pitches were sharp. I was getting these guys out, and then eventually I had like a rough game or something like that. But I just got back on track, and and then actually in the month of September, we were, I guess, at the end of August going into September. I think we were like 14 games out of first place, something like that. Mm-hmm. By the end of the season, we finished 2 games out of first place. So we just kept winning. The team was hot, and we kept making up ground. And I was 6-0 during that stretch. And so everything was just working really, really great. And then I put up some great numbers, and getting into that pennant drive stretch there maybe got me a little attention. And I ended up getting 4th in the voting for the Rookie of the Year. So it's just one of those dream seasons.
So now the most memorable career I'd say out of your career was your first game in the Rogers Center. What do you remember about that, playing in the first ever game in Toronto?
Especially my rookie. I'm not able to hear you. There we go.
Okay, there we go. Now,
I heard you say something about the Rogers Center.
Yeah.
At the time, it was called Sky Dome.
Yes.
So, well, the Sky Dome. Now, I was in 1989, so the '88 season, the Blue Jays played their games in what was called Exhibition Stadium, which was a Canadian Football League stadium. Mm. So we played there, and then we had heard that, we all knew that they were building this brand new state-of-the-art stadium that was going to have everything that was supposed to be ready the following season, the opening day of 1989. Well, when opening day came around, they weren't ready. So they picked the date. It was June, I forget, it was like the first week of June that they picked that would be the opening day in the new stadium, which was when we came into town. Just so happened, and it just happened that was my turn to pitch in the rotation. So it just fell on me that I got to pitch in that first game in Sky Dome. I went up against Jimmy Key, who was a very successful, great pitcher in the major leagues for many years. So we went head to head, and I did all right. I did. I didn't pitch the greatest, but I got us into the 6th inning. Had a lead. I gave up the first home run to Fred McGriff there. So I think that's where we got I gave it 2 or 3 runs. I think that was a 2-run home run by McGriff. And like I said, we got to the 6th inning. Some of us got on base trouble and put in some relief, and we held the lead. So I ended up getting the very first win there. So a lot of people bring that to my attention. And the game was a little different, but as a major leaguer, it's just somebody goes, "Oh, it's just another game." It kind of was, but then again, it wasn't. There was like a different kind of electricity in the Toronto baseball fans there for this new stadium, cheering for their team. And the stadium was really cool. It was the first one with the retractable roof. Mm-hmm. They had a hotel in there. They had a Hard Rock Cafe. They just had all these other amenities inside there that just made going to the ballpark really a fun place to go to. And so just was the time that we were there, and I got in that game, and it was slightly different. And, the people of the Sky Dome asked me if they could have my hat that I was wearing that game, and they wanted me to sign it, and they put on some kind of a display. I've heard people that took tours of Sky Dome, and they took them to this place where they had a lot of like the first ball, the first bat, and my hat was one of them, and it was there for a lot of years. I never went there to go see it myself, but a lot of people told me about it, so I go, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, you should go by there sometimes and see if it's still there.
I heard it isn't no more, but I don't know. If I'm ever in Toronto, I'll go take a peek, see what's in there or not.
How ruckus was that crowd? Because first game in a new stadium, and it's huge. And it's huge. I'm sure it had to be a sellout crowd.
It was a sellout. It was different though. I know things have changed a lot since then, but the Canadian fans were very quiet, kind of baseball fans. We always talked about how weird it'd be when we played in Toronto. It was like quiet. They're there quietly watching the game. And if someone got a base hit, you'd hear clapping, they would stop. It was like a weird thing. You know, we talked about it amongst ourselves. Like, you know, the Canadians, maybe they don't know baseball as much as the Americans, or just maybe they're just a different personality in Canada compared to sports fans in the United States, or what? I don't know. But it was like a weird thing. So I'm trying to remember if it was still kind of like that on that first time there or not. Hard to remember. A lot of years ago.
So you started 23 games your final year with the Brewers. You went 9-8. What do you remember about your final year in the majors? And did you know indeed that was indeed going to be your final year pitching professionally?
No, I didn't think that was going to be the case. 1990, I had a rough year. I got sent down to the minor leagues after the first month of the season. I went to Denver and I really struggled. And I think a lot of people do struggle if you're having a hard time and then you're trying to pull yourself together in Denver. You know, Denver is just a real hard place for pitchers to pitch.
Yep.
So I struggled most of the year there, but I kind of pulled myself back together. I got called back up at the end of the season. And, you know, I got to kind of do something here, you know. I went down to New Orleans and worked out with a professional trainer down there, a guy by the name of Mackie Shilstone, who's trained a lot of big-time athletes, you know, and he still does. And so I went down there and he just worked my butt off. I was there for like over 6 weeks, and I'd get up at 7 in the morning, I'd meet him at 7, but I got up earlier at the hotel that I was put in, and I had my diet planned out by him and his dietitian. I'd eat breakfast. I'd meet him then at 7 in the morning at the Tulane University track, and he would just run my butt off. And then we'd meet the place. It was like a hospital rehab center kind of place where we did the weight work and all these other exercises. And so, I mean, I did that 6 days out of the week for 6 weeks straight. I got in great shape. So when I went to spring training in 1991, I was kind of like on the outskirts of, you know, trying to make the pitching staff. And I pitched great throughout the whole spring training. I mean, I put up great numbers. But then they said, well, Don, you're going to start the season in Denver. I was like, oh, wow. So I go down. It was like we played 2 games at Wrigley Field, and the team was going to fly to Texas to open up the opening day. I flew to Denver to meet my team there, and you know, we started like 4 days or so after the Major League season started, something like that. And I pitched opening day for the AAA team. And after my 5th inning, I put up 5 zeros. Had an easy time. And as I came off the field, our manager, Tony Muser, says, "You're done." I said, No, I'm good. I can keep going. I thought he was worried I might have the arm strength. You know, after spring training, I wasn't built up really for 9 innings yet. But I said, no, I'm good. As well, we're taking you up because tomorrow you're flying to Toronto to meet the Major League team. So it kind of hit me. Oh, I'm going to the Major Leagues again. So I was in AAA for 1 day. And then I made it back up, and I played the rest of the season. But they kind of had me as the 5th starter. And if there was an off day, then I would miss the start, but I pitched in the bullpen. And, you know, I started pitching really, really good. And I was pitching regularly, but, you know, it was unfortunate that, you know, if you look at my stats, my ERA looks terrible. Well, the one thing that killed me was that first game they called me up and I pitched in Toronto. I went 1 inning. I didn't even get it out in the 2nd inning, and I gave up 6 runs. Oh, that just kills you.
Yeah, that will kill it. Yeah.
And another hard game I had during the season kind of ruined that. But I felt I pitched pretty good in the role that they put me in. And then towards the end of the season, we were out of first place, so he's trying to do these other little experimental things, giving guys other opportunities to start. They were trying to make Dan Plesac from a closer to a starting pitcher, so my spot. So at the end of that season, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. We had a young phenom pitcher coming up out of AAA, a kid named Kyle Eldred, who pitched a lot of years in the big leagues. So I thought, I don't know, this looks too good for me. So then at the end of that season, the Brewers fired our general manager, it was Harry Dalton, and then they hired Sal Bando. So Sal Bando that next day fired Troublehorn, our manager, then we get a new manager, and then he called me like the day after that, telling me they're taking me off the 40-man roster. So at that point, by taking me off the 40-man roster, I could have accepted the deal and signed a minor league kind of contract with them in return, or I could have chosen to be a free agent. So I kind of thought, well, you know what? I think I might try this free agency thing. So I ended up, over the winter, I signed a deal with the San Francisco Giants. So spring training in 1992, I was going to go into Major League Spring Training with them. And I thought, well, I think I could probably make that staff. Or worse, okay, they put me down to AAA, but I know sometime I'll be hot, and they'll need help, I would get called up. So that was the thought process I had. But what happened was, in spring training, well, just before spring training, which kind of killed me, is Kevin Mitchell was an all-star outfielder for the Giants. He had a lot of home runs and big-time player. They traded him to the Seattle Mariners for 3 pitchers. So they got Billy Swift, who was an Olympic teammate of mine, and Mike Jackson, a relief pitcher, and Dave Burba. So they brought 3 major league pitchers in, so that kind of also cramped my opportunities. So what had happened to me was they sent me down from major league camp to minor league camp. I pitched a couple games down there, and then they released me. So that was kind of disappointing. I thought, I signed as a free agent to come in here. I could at least pitch in AAA. So then now I was at home just trying to keep my arm in shape, and it would be like 5-6 weeks later, I finally got an opportunity with the Detroit Tigers organization. I signed a minor league deal, and I played the minor leagues the rest of that season. At that point, though, beforehand, I didn't think that would be the end of my major league career. So I finished out the year. The Tigers organization, they would release me at the end of the year. I didn't get to go to spring training the following year. No team would take me, so I'm just kind of surprised about. I had a lot of success. At least to a minor league camp or play for a AAA team as an insurance kind of a guy.
Right.
So I began that season in the Mexican League, and then about a couple of months there, my agent got me a deal to play AAA with the Cleveland Indians. So I finished out that year with them. It was just that kind of thing, up and down minor leagues, a couple more years. Played another part of the season in the Mexican League. I went to a couple of winter balls, one to Puerto Rico, one to the Dominican, just to be seen and get some scouts. And I did real well while I was there. But then finally, that 1995 year rolled around, which was the 1994 season ended with the strike. If you remember that.
Yep.
And so there's no World Series of '94. So that '95 spring training, the strike and stuff wasn't settled. So the Pirates and Braves were 2 teams that were interested in me as being a AAA player, help the young players, and maybe if I did well, I could, I was the guy with major league experience in their AAA team.
Yeah.
So I went to spring training in '95 and did that. I started the year in AAA, and about a month into that season, I got released, and that's when I went to Taiwan for the next 5 years. So, I figured that as long as I was pitching good, I thought maybe I can get back to the United States, because I heard that if you went to Taiwan, the Japanese league would always take some of the top players to Japan, which I thought, well, Japan pays pretty darn good money to bring you there, and if I was doing good there, then maybe that would be my opportunity to bounce back to the major leagues in the United States. So after my 4th year in Taiwan, I was the MVP of the league. And I thought, okay, here's my shot, man. The Japanese are going to be getting a hold of me, or maybe, possibly, a major league team might have, saw how well I did, and maybe I could have a shot. Didn't happen. One bad thing that took place was the Japanese economy kind of almost collapsed. Like they had a big-time recession, a major recession, which devalued their yen, and it took more yen to pay Americans in dollars. Going in that 1998 season, each Japanese team had 2 foreign players, non-Japanese players per team. They were talking about going to that next season to going to 3. I go, heck, I'm the MVP of the league now. They're all down to a third, foreign player, and I thought I had it made. But when that recession and that economic meltdown happened, I guess, they didn't go to 3. They didn't even keep it at 2. They reduced to only having 1 foreign player on the team. So that kind of killed me. That was my best chance. I went back to Taiwan again the next year. I was on a mediocre team. I pitched okay at best. And I thought, okay, I think my career, I was going to be turning 30, I was 36 years old. So I had someone tell me, if you ever want to play 1 more year, don't quit, go to Italy and play. So I always kept that in my mind. And so after I left Taiwan after that 5th season, I was not going back no more. I got in contact with the Italian teams, and they brought me there, and I played 1 more year in Italy. Had a great time. And I was 37 years old. I knew there's no chance of me playing in the major leagues no more. I'm 37. My son was, he was like 8 years old at the time. So I'm out of the country a lot, and I was missing a lot of things in his life, school and sports and all that kind of stuff. So I finally said, well, you know what? It ain't happening. It's time for me to call it quits. So I called it quits after the 2000 baseball season, playing in Italy, which we won the championship there, so that was kind of fun. And I got to see Europe, and that was it. It was time at that point.
So when you did decide to call it quits, what ultimately did you do in the end? Did you decide to go into coaching, broadcasting? What did you decide to do?
I wasn't sure. I met before, like about 2 seasons or so before I was done in Italy. I was still in Taiwan, going to Italy. Here in my hometown, somebody introduced me to the high school baseball coach. So I had a place to throw the ball in the off season, and I got to know him and stuff like that. And he started saying, "Well, hey, when you decided to quit, would you consider being a high school baseball coach?" I go, "Yeah, maybe. That sounds kind of good, So when I did retire and quit from the Italy that last season, he said, "Hey, do you want to do it?" So I'd be for 2001. So I was thinking about it, but I still well, what kind of a job I got to do? I got to do something for the rest of my life yet, So this one guy I knew was an insurance man, so he brought me in to work for him. He says, "Try it out, because you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it." So I said, "Okay, I got to get a job here. I got to do that." And I told the high school coach at the very end, I said, "Look, I can't commit. I got to try this out. I go, maybe next year or in the future or whatever." Well, I did that insurance thing and I hated it. So that didn't work. So the following year, the high school coach called me and said, I go, "Yeah, I'm going to commit. I'm going to go for it." So I coached that first year and I loved it. And I go, "What role would I be?" He goes, "Well, I got 2 openings. You can either be my assistant at the varsity or you can be the head JV coach." And I go, "Well, tell me what they do." So he explained what my role would be as a coach at those 2 different levels. I'd like to call my own shots here. I did the JV thing. So that first year I did it. I loved it. Now, when I was drafted way back in the day, that was after my junior year in college. So I didn't finish college, and that was in my mind, I want to go back. Well, I talked to my wife and said, "How about if I can go back to college, a little local college here out of the Milwaukee area, and I can get my degree and be a teacher, and I can coach the baseball team." So that's what I ended up doing. So I got my teacher license, and I taught some social studies, and I started, I haven't quit yet. This last season was my 20th year as being the JV coach.
There you go.
So I've done it ever since then, and my role was be the JV coach, and when the season ends, I always finish up helping the varsity, and then we go into the playoffs, and and just kind of wrote it out like that. And I've totally and thoroughly have enjoyed that. So 20 years of being a JV coach, and I did teach some classes in that same school district, but things kind of changed. Things happened, I'll put it at that, and I ended up leaving, and I went to another school district where I ended up becoming a special ed assistant. So I've been doing that for the last 6 years at least, and it's a very rewarding job, helping kids with lots of kinds of disabilities and whatnot, and so that's what I do now. That's how it kind of ended, and I moved on to that. And during that time, I got to watch my son play his baseball games.
There you go.
From the time he was a little kid throughout high school, and He went on to college at the University of Wisconsin, where they don't have a NCAA men's baseball team. The only one in the Big Ten, which is kind of surprising. But he played on the club baseball team, which is a very competitive team and league they played in. So he played 4 years there. So me and my wife got to travel, and just from my house to Madison was only 75 miles. So we would go watch him play, and so did what I needed to do. Became the dad and husband, and was home, and still stuck with the baseball, stuck with the coaching, and it's all good.
Did you reach when coaching and still coaching? Have you led the team to any championships?
Well, first of all, the good thing was at one point when my son came through the high school, I got to coach him on the JV team, and then when he made on his junior year when he made it to the varsity coach says, "Hey, why don't you be the full-time JV coach and be a full-time varsity assistant?" So back in that time in Wisconsin, we were part of the summer season. There was a spring for high schools, which went from March to June. Then there was a summer that started in the middle of May that went to the end of July. So that was when the kids were out of school. So the JV would play their games at 1 o'clock. So I'd do the game from 1 o'clock to about 3 or so. I'd change my uniform and then go do the varsity games, which were all at 5:30. So for those 2 years, I did double duties full time. And so the 20 years that I've been helping out with the varsity, this past season we made it to our state tournament. We were in the final 4 of winning the state championship. We lost to the team that eventually won it all. But that was like the 7th time our team played in the state championship, and we did win 2 of them. So we were state champions back-to-back in 2015 and 2016. So we've had a good run here with some good players and some, we got a great Little League program here, and these select, travel teams that kind of really helped our kids. By the time they get to high school, we got some, some good, they know the good fundamentals, and, it's kind of a baseball-oriented kind of a town, and so it's, we got some good players, and we've done a lot of good things, which has been, a lot of fun too.
Now let's talk about your Brewers, the team that you played for. This I'm kind of interested to hear about from you, because they've been on the edge of making it for years now. Why do you think they haven't been able to reach the plateau of World Series? I know the obvious answer is because of the Dodgers, but like you said, baseball is baseball. Any given day, somebody can be beaten. Why do you think they haven't reached that with the talent that the Brewers have on that team?
Well, I guess let me start back. After I left the Brewers, shortly thereafter, it became that the money was getting bigger and bigger, that the Brewers were a small market and they couldn't compete to pay the super big $1 million contracts, that they gradually got bigger and bigger to the craziness of what they are today.
Yeah.
So for many years, the Brewers could not ever keep a good player. So as he was able to make enough money, we'd have to let him go or trade him, or the New York Yankees would get a hold of him and stuff like that. So that kind of stunk. So a lot of years, the Brewers were losing like 100 games in a season. They were in last place. It wasn't good.
Right.
Then the owner sold the team to a guy that promised that he'd spend more money on salaries and this, and he did that. And he's the current owner now. And then by about, 2008, I believe, they finally made the playoffs for the first time since like 1982 when they were last in the World Series. Mm-hmm. And so that was exciting for the fans that they made the playoffs, and they were spending money on getting better and better players. But it's hard. Only one team ends up winning the World Series. But they improved themselves. And then I think in 2011 they made the playoffs again, and we were able to get again some more of these free agents, and they're making some good trades and stuff like that. So it was a long time. It just took a long time before they finally got up there. Then the 2018 season, the Brewers were able to get Yelich, and they got Cade. Mm-hmm. So they got these 2 big time guys in the off season. So that helped a lot. And then, Christian Yelich goes on and has a great year, and he's the MVP and things like that. The Brewers made the playoffs again, but they had to do it in a different way. I got to give a lot of credit to their general manager. They got a new general manager, probably going back to the 2016 or something. He kind of got rid of all the major leaguers and traded them and got a lot of minor leaguers in return. And a couple of quick years, these minor leaguers are good, plus a few more trades. All of a sudden, they're making a run for the playoffs again. So in that 2018 season, they made it. So they had to rebuild, but they couldn't be like the big Yankees and the Dodgers to just overpay these superstars. They got some good players, but they had to learn how to get the right guy. That's probably not getting much attention, but it's a good player, and they find a way to make him fit into their system in which they have to work with. So the Brewers have improved. I think they probably do the best at that, of making their players work, guys up and down, and making these little trades for. You think that's not a big name guy, but they always seem to come in and do a great job. And so these last few years, the Brewers they made the playoffs here in the last 3 years in a row now, and now they're in first place. And what they did with a lot of their trades and stuff like that, they got a lot of good young pitching. And the pitching right now, the Brewers have their top 3 starters are just going off. With Corbin Burns and Woodruff and Peralta. Those are the big 3 guys. They're just doing it, which we knew they could, but I think they're kind of exceeding a lot of the expectations. And you got Josh Hader in the bullpen. So the Brewers pitching staff they're like one of the top in the league right now. So in this day and age where the pitching is really taking over, the Brewers have like one of the best in baseball right now. And that just kind of shows that, they're in first place right now in the National League Central Division. So, they had to do it in a different way, as, like some of these big teams and these big cities can do.
Now, I gotta say, I'm upset with this move, but it's the Rays. I'm a Padre fan, but I'm also a Rays fan as well because I live close by in the St. Pete area. I was upset when they traded Willy Adames to you guys, because now his performance, even though it was decent here, he's really excelled with you guys. He's came up, he's hit home runs, he's been like a team leader besides Yelich and Kane and all that. How much do you think he's been to them accomplishing what they want to this year? What do you think of that move?
Well, at the time, I knew who Willy Adames was. I thought he was a nice player. I saw his stats. I mean, they were fair at best at Tampa at the time. But that's how the Brewers have been doing things. They get a guy like him. They didn't get Chris Bryant or Rizzo or any of these other big-time guys. They got Adames. But he fit in perfect. I've listened to the general manager, the president of the team here in Milwaukee talk. They had their eye on him for a couple of years. And he said, finally, this was the right timing. Everything aligned up, and they got him. And he's fit right in. His personality is really been a big thing that people have liked a lot, that he brought to the clubhouse.
He helped out here. He helped out here, with his...
But man, he came right in, and then he got hot, and he's become a fan favorite here real quickly. And he's been hitting home runs and playing great defense, and his numbers are phenomenal since he's been here. That trade took place on May 22nd, because they keep talking about that was the day they got him in the trade. And the Brewers, I think, have the best record in baseball since he's been on the team and stuff like that. So
they do.
That was one of those great trades that have worked into the Brewers' favor, and that's what they've been having to do these last several years. And he's doing a great job. He's like one of the leaders of the team, and the Brewers are in first place, and it's worked out really well for them.
Now, where do you see them ultimately ending up this year? Do you see them winning the division and going into playoffs and going into the championship round, division round? Where do you see them going? Because obviously, I think right now, honestly, they're going to win the division. The Cardinals are off and on. Of course, you got the Pirates, they're in rebuild mode. The Reds, rebuild mode too. And
That's who we're just barely ahead of right now. I think going into today, I think the Brewers were 7 games ahead of them. They've been playing pretty good lately. But I don't think the Reds are going to be able to overcome 7 games on the Brewers to finish up. And I think the Brewers are going to hold on because they got those 3 starters pitching great. Plus, then Lauer's the other starter and Hauser is the other starter. And they've been doing a pretty good job themselves too here as of late. So I think the pitching will keep the Reds from overcoming them. So I do predict and believe that the Brewers will win the division. Now these little series you've got those 3 hot starters with a phenomenal bullpen with Josh Hader and Devin Williams out there. I think the pitching will hold the teams down. If the Brewers just get a little hot at all with the offense, I think they could be unstoppable.
So
in a series, in a 5-game or 7-game series.
So who would you say is your rival now with the Cubs in rebuild mode?
With the National League overall?
Yeah.
I would say, well, of course, the Dodgers, because they can buy all the players, and they got a good team. The Padres are gone all out, too. And the Giants, surprisingly, the Giants came out of nowhere.
Yeah, they came out of nowhere.
So I think those are the 3 teams out west that will challenge the Brewers. Out in the East, the Mets are kind of struggling a little bit now. And the Phillies, I think, right around 500 are trying to contend with them. I mean, they're nice teams, but I think the Brewers are ahead of them. And so I think it's just between them, the Brewers, and out west. So, and when you get down to it, I think the Brewers should make it to the NLCS. I think they could win it. The Dodgers got a great pitching staff and a ton of offense out there. I think when it gets to that point, the Brewers are good enough to do it. But I learned this with my high school, playing in those state, championships. It was to make it to state at a high school level, and I think it might pertain here too, is you have to have good pitching, you still have to have good defense, and you have to hit. The determining factor is you have to have the breaks. So who gets the lucky breaks is, I think, the defining change between this good team and that good team. So when we won it in high school those 2 years in a row, the breaks went our way on top of the good pitching, defense, and hitting. Mm-hmm. So I think, similarly, the Brewers would have to do something like that too. They have to hit and pitch and play defense and get the breaks. Whoever gets the breaks is the final factor, I think, that pushes the one team over past the other.
Now, a couple more questions before I let you go and off into the sunset.
Yeah.
Do you think, with how good the Brewers are and how well they've been throughout the years, if they don't win the World Series, which is the team's ultimate goal, just like it was when you played, will they be in total rebuild mode, or will they stick with what they've got and keep trying to add on more people?
I don't think they'll go to rebuild mode. I mean, they got too good of a season now, and things would belly flop, and they're way below 500. Okay, then I think that'd be the first time. Maybe it may take part of another season. Then I think what they did in the past was then get rid of all those high-paid top guys, and then you have to rebuild. I don't think they would rebuild. A couple years ago, the Brewers went to that Game 7 with the Dodgers in that NLCS.
Yeah.
And it came down to the very end. I mean, I forgot that Dodgers left fielder. I think Christian Yelich crushed one out there, and the guy made a diving catch on the warning track.
I want to say Jock Peterson, maybe. That rings a bell.
It was him or someone else. I can't recall exactly, but they killed us. I mean, they would hold on and win the game and beat us. So that was a break that was in their favor. So we're that close. We got a lot of these guys signed for the next few years that the Brewers have control of. So I don't think we'll be losing players to free agency. And I think the Brewers have always been this way as of late, especially, is they don't get a player like an outfielder, but we already got enough outfielders. But they go, but this player still makes our team better by having them. Then they have more than enough outfielders or more enough infielders. So I think they're always going to keep doing that. No matter what happens with the outcome of this season.
Now, this is a bonus question. Were you surprised with what the Cubs did in rebuild? Did you think it was time for them to rebuild, or do you think they should set foot?
Maybe a little bit both, but they were about to start to lose their big players. I mean, those were the guys that won them a World Series back just 5 years ago.
Right.
And, Baez and Rizzo and Bryant and guys like that, Schwarber, they only let him go probably about a month earlier. But I was kind of surprised they went everybody just abruptly. Kimball, boom, gone. Now, I think their situation is different than what the Brewers are. See, the Brewers have control of their players for how many more years? At least a couple, at least.
Right.
Whereas some of those guys, this was the ending of their contract. So they figured, well, they better get something out of it because it looks like it's going to break apart. It looked like the Brewers were ahead of them, even the Cardinals. Yeah. So I think they made their minds up that, well, let's get these guys out here. We'll bring some new blood in and we'll rebuild and start that way.
Now, did you ever have that while you were playing for them? Were you guys ever close to that plateau of winning anything going into playoffs? And if so, did you guys have to feel like you had to be a part of rebuild mode when you played?
Back of the hill or bottom?
My first year in '88, like I said, we came 2 games out of first place. Back in that day, it was the Eastern and Western divisions in the American League, and just 2 teams made it. Period. So we came real close to making the playoffs. And then I remember going to that 1989 season, we were picked to win the Eastern Division in the American League, which we didn't. But we had a good enough team that people saw a lot of, the writers saw a lot of stuff in our team. In the next 2 years, we didn't quite do well. And then that's when, the Brewers they decided they were going to make some changes. That's when like I said, they fired our general manager, who then the new general manager fired the manager. And then they started bringing their own players and staff in, and that was the rebuild kind of year. But though in 1992, that first year with the new manager, Phil Garner came in, they were the last team to be eliminated. But it was after that they lost Paul Molitor. A year later, Robin Yount retired, and they couldn't bring. That's when they couldn't bring in. I think they were wanting to rebuild, but they couldn't get in it. They couldn't afford to.
Right.
Or weren't just able to, or just didn't make it happen.
So now my final question to you is your major league career. Give me one word, and what would your major league career be? What would you define that as?
That's his wife.
Could be.
I don't know. Let me think. It was the best. It's the best time of your life when you're a guy like me was in his early to mid 20s to his latter 20s playing Major League Baseball. It was, it's the highest baseball Major League is that. You're playing the best baseball players in the world. You're playing in the best stadiums with the best equipment, with big thousands and thousands of fans. You flew on chartered airplanes. You stayed in the best hotels around the country. I mean, the games were on TV around the country and starting to be around the world. So it was, I guess if you want to just put the main word, it was the best.
There you go. Perfect. And then, actually, one more final question is, what would you give to any young pitcher out there? What advice would you give them? Since you are a coach, what advice do you give your kids?
Well, I for, say, pitching, I can help a lot with that. I coach, I have to teach kids how to hit, but that's not really my specialty. I have an assistant that helps more on that. But with the pitching and just with the daily play, I try to teach the fundamentals. For pitching, let's just throw strikes. Let's have some good, consistent mechanics. Try to throw more strikes than balls, that sort of thing. But I try to really push the mental part of the game to them. The part that I focus on is concentration and focus, being confident, being positive. You got to be able to focus. You got to block out distractions. You got to know what you're doing and being ready to do it. And being confident and being positive, I say easier said than done. I tell kids no matter what, baseball and sports in general, it's mainly more failures go on than things go right for you. You know, as a hitter, you're going to get out more times, you get base hits. As a pitcher, you know, if you can try to throw slightly more strikes than balls, but when you do throw strikes, they get hit over the fence, and you know, the other times you're walking guys, and you know, more things go wrong than right. So you mentally got to be able to handle that. So I tell my kids, and I said, I don't want you to like it, but you can't let it affect you. You got to just kind of block it out, take the next pitch or next at bat, next inning or whatever, and take that in stride. So I pushed that a lot, being confident and believing that you're a good player, you're a better team than the other teams and stuff like that. You will overcome. You won't let things bring you down. So I really stressed that mental game a lot.
That's awesome. Glad to hear. Perfect. And it was awesome talking baseball with you. It was great. I thank you a lot on short notice. I appreciate it. I'm glad we are in touch. I'll text you here and there. I'd love to have you back on again in the future and as many times as you want to come on. I'd appreciate it. And if you're welcome to come on as many times you want.
All right, well, you just let me know and send me a message. I'll come back. We'll do that. Sounds good.
Definitely, we'll do. And I know for your sake, and I'm going to say this, go Brewers.
All right, here they go. I'm pulling for them. That's my team.
Yes, it
we'll
is.
Do it.
All right, man. Stay safe and have a good night.
All right, have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Those are some ugly ass dresses.
Done August, everybody. That concludes episode number 42. You all have a good night. Stay safe.